Here's a little tutorial for the new PPG sequence cut node that I wrote. The sequence cut node is something similar to the multicut node in that it is used to cut polygons horizontally or vertically into smaller pieces, into regular quads actually most of the time. The sequence quad is different in that it does not do regular cuts like the multicut. It's more like for for a sequence of cuts with various sizes. What I have here is a simple polygon object, a polygon plane that I have subdivided into 4 sections. And then I use the face ID tags node, which is also new in version 2, the new face ID tags node, to label them according to their face ID. And the prefix here is an F, so the number 0 gets F0, F1, F2, F3. You get the idea. So this node is very cool to separate the faces out if you want to treat them all separately. So now this result here, what we see here, is actually fed into a PPG diagnostic. That's where the colors come from. But it's mainly about this node here, the PPG sequence cut. And the PPG sequence cut, as you see here, as soon as I type in an asterisk or a wildcard to use all the faces that it receives, it will do this. So this is the default settings that we have here. And let me make this a little bit larger so that you can see the settings a bit better. So what it's doing is to cut these horizontally stretched faces. When I turn on the diagnostic display, you see the red arrows here signal me that the lower edge is always the selected edge for all of these polygons here. And we have rectangles in different sizes. They're called 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are these here. The names come from this attribute down here, the tag names, where you can give any kind of labels that you want to give your resulting polygons. And the size sequence, that is the one that creates these different sizes here. So 1 is equal to the size of 1, 2 is equal to the size of 2, etc. So these are currently only ratios. Because I stretched this polygon a little bit, the sizes are no absolute sizes and absolute units in space. They are ratios between all of the different polygons here. All of them, as you can see here, are flexible. When I stretch this lower polygon here, they are flexible because of this wildcard here in the field flexible. You can give an index or several indices for the elements that you want to be flexible. We will try that out in a bit. There's also this scale sequence that we try out a little bit later. So we will mainly talk about the settings in this section here because that's where you adjust everything for this multicut. As I said, you would type in numbers to define ratios. You can then use the scale sequence. That doesn't matter. The scale sequence doesn't matter because everything is flexible, so it will try to adapt to the size of the polygon. But when I make it smaller, you will see, oops, upsala, suddenly one of them disappeared. Number 4 disappeared for some reason. No, number 5 disappeared for some reason. And now when I squeeze it more, number 4 is going to disappear and only 1, 2, 3 are there. So it's trying to maintain the size of these objects here. Actually, as soon as one disappears, so let's see here when number 5 disappears, that is, when these objects cannot be squeezed any longer because they have reached their minimum sizes. And the minimum sizes are also these ratios in here, multiplied by scale. They will not become smaller than that. So this F1, F0 underscore 4 object is 4 units long and it cannot be squeezed any longer. But it rather deletes the 5th one here to stretch this out. So now this one is longer than 4, this one is longer than 3 units, this one is longer than 2 units, and so on until I squeeze them even more and bang somewhere here. So here's the point, now you can't squeeze them anymore. Now we need more space and it removes another one. You can, of course, make all of these stretchy down to the very, to the very end when you scale them down. So when I say the scaling is 0.01, for example, then, there is no minimal size that it has to watch. So now it multiplies all of these sizes here with 0.01, and, it can go down all the way. It never has to remove one of these subdivisions because they can be very, very small. Accordingly, if I scale this with 2, you see that there's already number 5 is already disappeared because we need much more space for the double size here. So that is a very handy thing with this scale, because that allows us not only to scale the whole thing, but also to define how squashy these things are here. Always remember, they cannot become smaller than what you adjusted. They can only grow. So they can grow infinitely, but they don't want to become smaller. Good. So there are other settings here. There is, for example, a repeat setting. This is interesting because it then uses, because there's a lot of space and it doesn't have to stretch them all out. With the space available, it doesn't have to stretch them so much. It can simply start a new sequence. So here's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with real units, more or less. And then 1, 2, 3 starts again because there's enough space for that. You see, they are still all stretchy. I can still all stretch them out. When I compress them, you see them disappear because there's not enough space. But when I stretch it longer, there will be more appearing because there's enough space for these objects to appear. That is the repeat option, which allows me to simply say I want more pieces. There's another one here that's called the end piece that repeats the first one at the very end. My idea behind it was, for a facade, for example, where you have side pieces, before the first window starts, then you could have this one at the very end. I was basically trying to mimic the multicut with this one here, which is not exactly working as intended, but it's a little bit like it. So number 1 and number 1 here at the very end are similar. So number 1 at the end will stay. It's also, squeezable, and it tries to maintain the size, but, this is not working completely. So that is the end piece here. What about flexible? So let's now try to set something specific. With a wildcard, I set them all flexible. With a -1, I could set the last one flexible, which would be number 5. You see, now number 5 is completely flexible until I compress it too much. So when I compress it too much, it needs to remove number 5 and stretch out number 4. So the last one will be flexible here. That's basically the default. So when I make none of them flexible, you see also number 5 is flexible, right? So number 5 is flexible and allows me to squash it until there's no more space for 5 units here. Then I can say I want the second one, because it's 0 based, I want the second one and the fourth one to be flexible. So number 2 and number 4 would be flexible. Now you see here, these two will change their size, and I can squeeze the whole thing together until they have reached their minimum size, and bang, number 5 gets removed so that these two flexible, can still move. And then you see, bang, number 4 gets removed. Now we only have the 2 as the flexible, and bang, so that one gets removed as well. So these are options, with this flexible. I want to say in a facade, for example, you have windows that should keep their size, and you have flexible pieces where you can specify, this one can stretch a little bit further. It wouldn't deform the window when I stretch this one here. Okay, for the tag names, you see that it inherits the source tag names, so F1, F0, F1, F2, etc. When I turn this off, you see that they just keep their names as stated here in this list. So this list, when I stretch it a little bit, you see that it's longer. It will only take the ones that are necessary for one sequence. If you have only 5 elements in a sequence, it will only take these 5 for the sequence. And if you have less of these, so let's say we remove number 4 and number 5 from the list, then you see, okay, it's gonna, or this comma here should be removed as well. You see that it creates numerical names. So it simply calls it number 3 and number 4 because, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Also, when I inherit the source tag, you see that it attaches the source name to these numerical values here, which is an easy way. You can remove all of these names and simply take the numbers. But it's nice if you have these names here, you can call them window and in between and window, so that later you have it much easier to define materials or other elements in a facade, for example. So I think that's it already. It doesn't seem too complicated. Sometimes it's a bit messy when you try to understand what's actually going on here, when you have a facade or so, but it's not so many elements. So it's basically the flexibles play a big role. So when you have the flexibles, when you scale them all the way down, then the flexible can, be squeezed together a little bit more and be more flexible. And also it will not try to remove something else. So for example, when I say all of these have their sizes here, only this one here, I'm doing it 0.1, for example, very small one. And also this one here, 0.1, right? And turn off the repeat so that it has to have a certain size. So repeat means, hey, we have enough space. We can collapse these flexible ones here and then repeat anything. So as soon as I turn on repeat, you see that the flexibles become really small and really small because we want to use all the space for additional subdivisions. So repeat will maximize the space, but if you don't have repeat on, this is all we have here. And if the source face is larger than number 2 and this one here, F2, and FO3 will try to, with their flexibility, try to keep it all together. So this way, because I made them very small, they can be squeezed together all the way before bang here, another panel like FO4 is going to disappear. Right? So it takes a bit training to get used to this kind of thing. Also, I try to do my best to have the same thing. If you're not familiar with version 2 of PPG, you see that it's really strange because we have a tapered polygon here, but it cuts all the way straight through. That's this one here, the cutting method. The old one, which works only on quartz, is this one here. This is I call it relative because it says, hey, the selected edge is the one down here, so we're going to cut this one here, and then the opposite edge in the same ratios. So if I pull this longer, if I pull this longer, then it simply changes the ratios of the cuts here in this upper edge, which is sometimes wanted. But sometimes I've already seen, when you bevel an object and want to put something on the roof, this is very annoying, when it does these cuts because the bevel faces are kind of tapered. Sometimes wanted, sometimes not. So that's the old method, the relative method, and this one is the new method, the so-called projection method. And I will talk about these settings in the tutorial for the multicut. So far, that's it for the PPG sequence tutorial. I hope you have fun with it because it saves you a lot of cuts. It saves you a lot of difficult multi-cut nodes where you have to decide how do I chain these together to get my building cut into sections, for example, with smaller rims in between. There you have like 6 nodes and you can replace them all with a single sequence cut node to segment the whole building into different pieces. That was it. Let me know if you have any feedback. Thank you.